MiniWarGaming's The Utgard Infestation!
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and it's time for another story time for the Utgard Infestation 40k narrative campaign. This is story time part 4, which means the missions you're going to watch today will be mission 4A and 4B. So, what has happened? There will be spoilers here. If you have not yet watched the previous episodes of this campaign, I strongly suggest you go back and watch those first. You don't want to jump midway into the story because you just don't. You want to take it from the beginning to the end. So you have been warned. So in our last 2 games, we had the Inquisitor, first off, try to go down and power up the elevator so they could bring bigger forces down into the Underhive and bring tanks and other things that they could into the caverns. In the meantime, Celine was forced to defend her shrine, which came under attack from the PDF and Imperial Guard forces loyal to the governor. Well, an Inquisitor failed in capturing the elevator. The Tyranid forces that he encountered, he was totally surprised by. He was totally taken back by the fact that he was against larger Tyranid organisms, as well as just things that weren't really part of a Genestealer cult. There was even a large Turvagon that came in there. And as he was drawing on his psychic powers, the shadow and the warp was disrupting, so he had to push harder, and it resulted in him the warp just lashing out at him a couple times and hurting him, but at the same time, he could feel a certain power just surge through him at the last moment. And as he charged at the Turvagon, he struck it down with all of his might, and he totally killed it. And this Turvagon had survived a lot of attacks and was regenerating and healing faster than they could kill it. But as the Inquisitor struck it down, he, for a moment, could feel a link between him and the Turvagon and then the rest of the Tyranids. And while he was contemplating this link, the Tyranid warriors armed with bone swords, so their own psychic versions of force weapons, came in and they cut him down. But his forces were still able to push those Tyranids back, and the Inquisitor did end up surviving. However, he was greatly altered by this. First off, he had a temporary link into the hive mind, just very short, and all he could get was impressions of what was going on. He could see for a moment the hive ship that was actually fused with the planet, and he realized that there was much more going on here than some sort of weird Tyranid infestation with Genestealer cultists, that there was an actual hive ship that had fused with the planet. He could even see a bit into its past, and he saw that it came from a larger fleet, and he even got a general idea of where that fleet was located before it got caught up in the warp storms and parts of it were scattered, and this one in particular coming to Utgard. And he could feel the result of that it was so damaged that a lot of the organisms within started to revert to their instinctive behaviors. The Genestealers in particular went back to their behavior of trying to infest the planet and subvert it and get it ready for a Tyranid infestation, which is why the Genestealer cult was formed. But at the same time, this Patriarch was different because it had access to more than just a regular Patriarch would have access to, which is why it was so different. It wasn't a regular Patriarch. It wasn't just a big Genestealer or a very large Broodlord. It was just a variant from that. And that's why it could be rebirthed as well, because the hive ship was there and able to rebirth the Patriarch whenever it died, which made the Genestealer cult that much more dangerous, because normally you kill the Patriarch and the rest of the cult kind of falls into disorder for a while until a new Patriarch is formed from another Genestealer. But that takes some time, allowing the defenders of the planet to kind of hunt down the cult and destroy it while it is very disorganized. And so as he struggled and he survived this attack and he made his way back up to the surface, he could also feel that his mind was altered, and he realized what he had to do in order to combat this huge threat, that he had to fight fire with fire, and that he had to use his psychic abilities to even greater strengths. And he found that he could actually tap even stronger into the warp, and that he could even tap into things that he previously didn't know how to do. And for this, to all intents and purposes, what's happened to him in the game terms is he's become a Psyker Mastery Level 2, and he will now draw from the powers of Biomancy. And normally an Inquisitor can't do this, so we know that's against the rules normally, but that's okay because this is the narrative. And so he's actually going to be using more of the physical powers, like the Tyranid hive fleets do, to try to combat these Tyranids and take them down and hunt them down and destroy this Emperor's foe. And so here at this time, he also saw that the cult members, a lot of them were being used to feed the hive ships. So they would, the Genestealer cult would find a lot of followers, and any excess that they could spare, they would actually send down to the ship, and they would get fed to the ship. So they would be melted down to their biomass and then used to heal the ship, and that eventually, once the ship had received enough of this biomass, it would be able to create more birthing organisms and more synapse organisms, and eventually overrun the whole planet, consume the planet, and use that biomass to construct new ships, and finally be rid of this planet and get off of it and go hunting and become a new splinter fleet, which would become a new threat for the sector, and if left unchecked, could become another large Tyranid hive fleet. So he saw that he really had to destroy this. So he returns to the surface to requisition more forces so he could just take them down and hit it while it's still weak. But when he gets to the surface, he sees that everything has devolved into chaos. And what he sees is that he hears is that the governor has declared the Sisters of Battle to be traitors and heretics, and that they are responsible for the destruction of the shrine and the destruction of the relic, as he says, and that they have failed in their duty, and that they are an enemy to the Emperor. And he orders his PDF forces to go and totally annihilate them. Croyle tries to gain an audience with the governor, tries to get in there. Even his badge doesn't get him past what he needed to. And he starts to really suspect that this governor is no longer himself, that he's probably under the influence of the Gene Stealer cult, if not a Gene Stealer himself. So he moves over and he joins with Selene's forces. What he finds is a battered and injured Battle Sisters force, but their faith had not yet wavered. Selene was still resolved to save the shrine, save the relic, and save this planet from this governor and from the Gene Stealer cult. Selene also was able to protect the relic that was left all these years ago. And it turns out it was actually a sword. It's a relic blade. And nobody's quite sure why it was left there to be protected all of these hundreds of years. But Selene sees that the situation is so dire that she decides to actually take up the blade and use it in whatever power it does wield to fight the governor, the PDF, and also the Tyranid forces. And the Imperial Guard who are stationed on the planet, there's not a lot of them, but their loyalties are kind of split. Some of them follow the governor and want to be obedient to him because he's their governor. And the other ones are more loyal to the Sisters because the Sisters have been there all of this time. And so they want to show their loyalty there, and they don't feel that the Sisters are actually traitors. So even some of the Imperial Guard go and join the PDF under the governor's control. And Croyle, he makes communication with an Imperial Guard cruiser that's not too far from the system, but a few days away, that has a rather healthy complement of Imperial Guard regiments and armor. And he requisitions them and orders them to come and reinforce them so they can purge this governor. And of course, they don't have a choice, not that they would want to, because they do want to, of course, destroy the Emperor's enemies. So they are on their way, but it'll still take them a few days to get here. And so the Sisters, the loyal Imperial Guard, and the Inquisitor and his small forces are all that stands between the planet and utter chaos and destruction from this Tyranid force. So two things are going to happen now. Selene, as the PDF, engages the Imperial Guard and the Sisters, and they just kind of hold on. They're not trying to push them back and destroy them all. They're just trying to hold on until the Imperial Guard reinforcements get there. But Selene is determined to go and cut this evil off at the head, and leads an elite spearhead to punch through the PDF lines and get to the governor's palace so that she can basically get revenge and kill him, and with hoping to cut off that leadership, not realizing all the intricacies that are going on. Inquisitor Croyle receives word from his spies that the governor has sent PDF to go and secure the elevator, the same elevator that he was trying to secure, except they're going to secure it at the surface. And he's worried that they'll be able to use that, and maybe the PDF don't realize this, but the governor might, to actually transport up larger Tyranid organisms. Because as of yet, they don't really have a way to get up in mass. You know, a couple Carnifexes get out, and obviously burrowing Trigons and stuff can get through, but the majority of the Tyranid forces are going to be stuck underground. But with access to the elevator, they could bring up the larger creatures, which can then, of course, lead the shock forces, and all the other creatures can spill out, and then that would cause even more problems. So our two missions today, in mission 4A, we are going to be watching Selene's forces attempt to punch through the PDF lines. They're going to be leading a shock attack and hopefully getting through so they can deal with the governor. In the meantime, we're going to see in mission 4B, Inquisitor Croyle and going to try to capture the elevator. And he's doing more of an infiltration force because he can't get a large force through the lines. He has to kind of sneak through with scions and with his own forces as well. So mission 4A and 4B are at the links below. Of course, 4A is free on YouTube, and 4B is in the MiniWarGaming Vault as usual. If you're not a Vault member, you can still go and watch 4B. You can sign up for a free 7-day trial. No strings attached. If you don't like it, just cancel and you won't be charged. I can say that because the majority of people who sign up do end up keeping it because there's just so much stuff in there. And then you get to access all the other halves of the narrative campaigns and everything in the past and everything in the future that we'll be putting out. And it's really not that expensive. You can get it for as low as less than $3 a month if you get the bronze yearly membership. And we appreciate the support because that is what allows us to do this. It allows us to keep the lights on and pay our employees, pay ourselves, and get everything that we need in order to make these videos. So thank you if you are a Vault member or are considering joining the Vault. So go ahead, click on the links below, and happy wargaming.